Welcome to episode 5 of Lessons in Leadership, where I'm joined by Candice, the CEO of PKF South Africa, which employs over 900 people across their 9 firms in the country and providing tax audit advisory services to small to medium and large enterprises. The big thing I picked up with our discussion was really around the theme of leading by caring. Candice shares a lot of practical insights around how she does this on a daily and weekly basis. I hope that you enjoy this. Candice, thanks so much again for joining us. And I think that maybe just before we get started into more of the practicalities around leadership and specifically from your experience, share an elevator pitch around what your role is and fundamentally what PKF South Africa offers.
Thanks, Grant. Yeah, PKF South Africa, audit and accounting network across the country. So churning out CAs every year who head off into industry and hopefully make some positive difference in society. We do all the traditional things that you would think of, right, that an auditing and accounting firm do. But I think the real value of what we do is trust, right? It's the trust that we allow society to have in business, and it's the trust that business give us. And I made a joke last year when we had our national conference. I said, who runs the world? And if you're younger than me, your answer is Beyonce, and you want to immediately start dancing and singing. Or Girls was the song, actually. But for me, I think it's that business really drives the country and drives the world, and it can either do it for good or not for good. As auditing and accounting professionals, we sit in this really unique position where we speak into these businesses, no matter how big or small. And if we're doing our job right, then businesses are doing stuff for good. And I think that's really the value that we add. And that's what I want the people in PKF South Africa to realize when they come every day. That's what they're doing. They might be submitting a tax return or casting a fixed asset register or whatever it is, but really what they're doing is putting that into society and into business, and it can just waterfall out from there.
What I find really interesting in the structure of PKF South Africa is that you've got the 9 firms. They're independently owned by the particular partners within those firms. And then PKF South Africa is really providing that oversight and centralizing, say, the training or the specific aspects that really make sense to centralize, and being the voice, the representative then to the international, call it parent of the brand. So describe to me what you're involved with on a weekly basis in ensuring that there is alignment across 9 different firms with their own MDs that are managing those particular firms. How is it that you spend your time on a weekly basis to ensure that there is alignment, but without necessarily trying to override or micromanage the particular firms?
Yeah, thanks, Grant. I spend a lot of time charging my AirPods, if I'm honest, because it's a lot of Teams calls and talking to people. I think you've mentioned the structure in South Africa of the individually owned member firms, and then this commitment to the greater PKF South Africa and this presence in South Africa. And I think it does 2 things for us. It allows us to play with the 9 offices, the 900 people, the 70-odd partners, but it also means that we can speak to our clients at their local level as well. And that kind of replicates out when you think about the PKF International Network. That same thing. We can play with our PKF member firm partners in Australia or the UK or whatever it is, but we can also speak uniquely to our South African clients. What that means for me in my role is that I've got 9 chiefs underneath me, and they've got all the chiefs in their firms, right? A lot of chiefs, too many chefs spoil the broth, all those good old things. But really it means it's about showing people the picture and showing them why it's good for them to go after that picture, showing them the value in that picture, and by the picture, the strategy and where we want to go as a national team. So it's about making sure that we're communicating that really well and inviting people to come on a journey with us that they want to come on, and not the old proverbial horse that you've dragged to water. Perhaps maybe I should be a politician next, because it's a lot of diplomacy. It's a lot of speaking to people, making that picture clear for them, and then encouraging them to come with us, and then resourcing them when they do that. It's being there to play that support role, to connect where we can see commonalities between the firms, whether that be in South Africa or internationally.
It's quite a topic now around what leadership style is the perfect style. What leadership tempo are you supposed to focus on? And on the one side, you've got a person that is quite vocal, very seen publicly, one that doesn't necessarily do a lot of talking, one that is in the middle. And from my experience, the moment one tries to define leadership in one box, in one style, it really does an injustice to the real authenticity and imperfection of a human being around how we actually are as a society. In the leadership styles that you've seen and that you've naturally adopted, what for you has been one that you can describe that has worked for you? Again, this is unique to your own story, to your environment. And I think it's just important for everyone just to gain different perspectives around the types of leadership styles that don't necessarily happen in a very explicit way, but it happens naturally as you practicing and as you're going through the motions. So maybe just share around what you've become conscious of your type of leadership style, because for me, it's definitely not from you jumping at the top of the stage and singing Kumbaya, because that's not your style from what I've observed over the last couple of months and years.
And because my singing voice is horrible, you jump on stage and push me off as quickly as you could, Grant. And you're completely right. I think the thing is, right, and maybe this is going to sound easier said than done, and I'm going to explain it, but we said it earlier, it's not rocket science, and I couldn't be a rocket scientist. That's just not who I am. So if I'm going to show up as a leader, and I certainly have learned this in moving into PKF South Africa as a CEO, if I'm going to show up as a leader, that takes a lot of conscious effort. I have to pay attention to that. If I'm also trying to be something I'm not. So for me, it's got to start, if I'm going to lead people, it's going to be because I'm being me, and that's going to be enough. Leadership is really just about the people who I've been entrusted to look after. And that starts with my really immediate team, and then it expands out from there. And when I say it's not rocket science, the reason I say that is I just start with, what kind of leader do I want? I'm also a human. I've also got people I look up to, and I've also been led more often than I've led. So what kind of leader do I want? And that starts as the core. And then with the genuine interest for the people who I'm looking after, you learn what they need. You've just become a parent. So I think sometimes it's a bit like, and I'm not a parent, so you can tell me this is rubbish, but I think it's a bit like being a parent. You really care for these people that you've now been entrusted to look after, right? So your daughter, you love her. And I'm not going to use love at work, but I really care about my team, right? I don't want any lawsuits here. And that means that I'm going to both champion their strengths and their interests and what they really want to do. But it also means that when the time comes to go, I can see something that you're battling with, or let's talk about this thing where maybe you're not making use of your full talents in this area. I'm going to want to do that. And not because that's going to look good on my KPI or it's going to be great for our member firms. I'm going to do that because there's a genuine concern for the person I've been asked to look after. And yeah, I don't know how we're going to put this into a style, but I think really for me, it comes down to people. I'm a person. I want a leader who listens to me. I want a leader who helps me find the solutions rather than just gives me theirs. And if we're being quite honest, that's still something I'm learning to do, to help somebody work their way through the quagmire to a solution rather than just jumping in and going, I think we should do it like this. And I've told my team to call me out if I do that. So yeah, I think my leadership style certainly is probably more interpersonal. I know that we've got incredible professionals who work under some very stressful circumstances. So it's about caring for them and looking what they need and then making sure that I can help bring that to them.
The theme that I'm picking up here is lead by caring, and by caring, be unconditional. Don't place conditions. Don't be transactional in the way that you're leading a team. If I'm a manager in a big organization, but I've got a team of 2 to 5 people as an example, what I'm picking up from your perspective is really first identify what type of leader you would love to follow, what type of leader you see as being really energizing and inspiring in whatever form you would define that to be. And then from that actual clarity, then go into, all right, how do I make this work in the existing team that I have with the type of individuals that I have? Because I guess that it's very similar to how everyone communicates and receives communication and then digests that in a very different way. So you as a leader now need to be in a position where what is the narrative that you need to start sharing, and what tactics do you need to actually start executing to really make sure that it resonates with your team? Because there's a saying that if a leader without a follower is basically just wandering around. And I think really making sure that when your team follows you, and by following, I don't mean being submissive, following as in like buying into the vision, buying into the direction, buying into why we're doing it in the first place, and then understanding the practicalities of how one can buy in and how you can realize the biggest potential. So from your side, what have you found to be one or two really important factors in how you're communicating with your team?
Grant, that's why you are the interviewer here. You put that very succinctly and much better than my ramblings. And you are completely right. It starts with understanding yourself, just to go back to that point. But then the thing that I did very early on when I joined PKF South Africa was sit down with each team member individually and ask them a couple of questions that really had nothing to do with their role. It just had to do with who they were and how they showed up in the world. So, what's the thing that comes before work? If we're honest, we've all got something. I've learned if it's a parent, it's likely to be your kids or your family. But what's that one thing that if you tell me that's coming up, I'm not going to ask any questions? I trust that you're going to show up every day, bringing your best for the team that we work in. But if that thing comes up, I'm not going to ask any questions. And how do you like to receive positive feedback? And how do you like to receive constructive feedback? Because you're right, everybody is different. So you can take what you innately want. It's that old saying of treat others the way you want to be treated, but you've then really got to listen and listen quite hard and listen to individuals to know how then you can speak to them so that you're making sure that you do it in the right way. And some people, you can give them a little bit of a tease on a team call with everybody there and they're going to laugh and they're going to take that. And other people, that's just going to cause them incredible stress and you're really not going to get the best out of them. So there is a lot of listening that goes in afterwards. And I find myself, you come out of an interaction and you're asking two questions. Did we get to the right solution in that interaction? And did we get to that solution in the right way? How did I show up in that interaction, and how did I help the other person get the best from that interaction? The longer I've been in leadership roles, the more I realize I spend a fair amount of time looking back and going, not only did we get the right answer, but did we get to the right answer in the right way and in the most effective way and in the way that's done the most good and the least sort of harm to anybody in the conversation. And as I'm rambling, I'm not sure I've actually answered your question.
You've added some profound gems there. So definitely don't apologize for that. And there's a story where a person, I don't know where it was from, but she did this conference and she asked everyone to put up their hand if they had ever been on a communication course to practice what they call active listening. And like people put up their hand and she literally just in a very candid way just told them that was absolute rubbish. And the only way to truly know and understand how to listen is to give a damn, is to actually just give a crap, to actually just care for whatever purpose that you're trying to fulfill or for the team that you're trying to serve. We're calling it active listening. It should just be listening. You don't need to put active in front of listening. Listening should be active. It's a verb, like it's actually an action or doing word that you're doing. And so what I'm picking up around your sharing is that when you do listen, be there, be present. What I've noticed practically at meetings, I've been in some organizations and in some teams where the leadership team, like CEO or C-suite level individuals, they arrive. And first of all, they'll arrive late. They will not apologize. Secondly, then they will be on their phone. They'll say, oh, sorry, I've got to just quickly take this. And all what that is doing is it's just communicating to you that you are not important or your time is of less value than this call coming in right now. And yes, there are specific exceptions where there are serious emergencies, like we referred to earlier, on family or specific areas. But fundamentally, if that's happening consistently at most of your meetings with senior personnel, that is sharing a culture that is definitely not enabling listening in the most authentic way of how we really do as human beings identify with someone listening to us in an unwritten way, is sharing with us that you are of value to my to my time, and you are of value to what we're trying to do as a team. And like you said, it's about, did we do it in the right way? So that really gives a lot of insight for that. And then, Candice, if we were to look now in terms of, you're not doing this on your own, and there's most likely a support system or people surrounding you that really give you more foresight to the present times as well as the future. Maybe just describe to me how you've gone about finding a mentor, or finding a great person that wouldn't even call themselves a mentor, but would call themselves someone that really is your cheerleader and your supporter, and really in great times as well as bad times, they're there unconditionally as well.
Grant, I wanted to come back to the active listening. It's also about listening when people aren't speaking, right? Like when they aren't saying anything. So I want to share the story. This morning I opened up my emails and I got a calendar invite for a meeting later this week from a team member that was sent at 12:30 on a Sunday night. Now, I could have just replied and said, yeah, thanks, cool, I'll be at the meeting. But why are you sending me a calendar invite at 12:30 at night on a Sunday? What's wrong? And yeah, it's all great when a person's in front of you, you need to be listening. But I think, and maybe this harks back to comparing it to a parent, and it sounds like I want a kid, but I promise that's not what this is about. I'm not taking your daughter. But I think it's about when you care about the people and enough about them, it's not only when they're talking that you should be listening. You've got to be watching the whole time. And that's the joy of leadership, right? That's actually the fun part, right? Is really getting to support your teammates.
If I'm in a team right now and we're sitting with this either remote working environment or a hybrid working environment, that's huge in the sense that now listening in its traditional form, where you were in person with someone, is changed. It's fundamentally now evolved, where also included within listening is observation. Because now with observation is, you're in a remote environment. If I'm on a call with you now via Zoom or Google Meet as an example, in addition to that listening side and listening in person, you're also picking up on the nuances of body language and all of those non-verbal cues. But now you don't have those non-verbal cues in traditional sense of being in person. So therefore, picking out on why they're sending you an email in the middle of the night, or why is it that they seem to be way too delayed in responding to particular agenda points or particular outcomes that we're wanting from each other. There may be something, a bigger picture behind that now, if you're practicing leadership within your team on a daily basis, you needing to now focus on what you're not seeing.
Yeah, and let's be honest, right? We all put stuff off, and I'm human too. And I find the things we put off are the things we're not 100% certain we can do, or the things that we don't have all the information we need, or the things we're a little bit worried about. I don't think anybody wants to come to their job every day and not do it to the best of their ability. Yeah, you got to listen when there's nothing happening and nobody's talking. What is that telling you? Is somebody worried about something? Are they missing a resource here, or what's that? Innately, I believe people show up and want to do the best they can every day. Mentors, I think, was where we were meant to be going. And I was really lucky. The managing partner in Durban put me on to a guy who's now actually the CEO of PKF International. And I guess we just had similar outlooks and approaches. So it was a very easy relationship, but also he was following a couple of years ahead of me, just the path that I was looking at. But I've also just found, and I guess this is just to anybody listening, that there have been people who I've admired for various reasons. And I've said to them, can I talk to you? One of them was the head of audit at a firm in Sydney. And I was like, this guy, I like the way his brain works. And I haven't had a no yet. So I think while people may not feel like they have something to give, so they're not going to, offer themselves up, when you ask them, it's flattering. And I haven't had a no. So I'd encourage anybody who, and they don't necessarily have to be in your field either. I mean, I was lucky that I had somebody who was doing sort of the path that I was looking at. But I think if you can get somebody with a different perspective, that's great. I actually see my immediate team like that. I'm a CA, right? No secrets about that. But I'm not a trainer. I'm not marketing. I'm not as technical as I used to be. I encourage my team to mentor me on the things that they do really well, because they've got the answers. I've got to help them be able to do those answers, but I love learning from them as well. So yeah, I think you can learn from all around you if you're willing to ask.
And if we look at this then for someone listening now around what they possibly could do if they're exploring gaining a support system or influencing their support system in such a way where they can find someone to mentor. What I would even say from what I've done also in the past is don't necessarily go in with the marriage proposal. Go in with a specific question that you have and a clear question that you have, not being too vague, specifically asking that question and making sure that there's no agenda to that other than non-commercial reason. So because I think people today are really tired and fatigued of being sold to in a vague different direction. So being explicit in why you would like to chat, why you would like to hear from their perspective, and from that first encounter, really picking up whether this type of person, as you alluded to earlier, like, do your values align? Can you joke if you have humor like that? Or what are you finding that really aligns both of you as just two professionals or two human beings? And thereafter assess whether you would like to formalize that relationship a bit more based on the trajectory of that conversation in the beginning. Because for me, I think the moment someone goes in with, hey, I would like you to be my mentor, it doesn't allow for enough time for the relationship to be tested, and you need that first at least one encounter. I would recommend maybe 2 to 3 over a couple of months, and then from there finalizing on it. But for me, I think that's really where I've seen it work, when you are not trying to construct this in a very artificial way, where you're trying to allow that organic relationship to happen. And if both parties see it happening in a natural way, it's a no-brainer that it's going to formalize more into a routine mentoring session, say every month.
You're so right. It comes down to that. There's got to be a genuine interest, right? If you've just chosen somebody and you've got no sort of, I've never used the word mentor, right? So I've never said to someone like, will you be my mentor? And I probably was worried that I didn't have enough questions. So for me, we might have had a conversation, I might have heard them say something, and I was actually just interested in that thing. So can we have a chat about that thing? Can we have a chat about the way you think about that? Or can you just, even if it's just, how did you get to where you are? I think maybe at times I've been a little bit intimidated because I didn't have that, okay, how are we going to do this? And when are we going to meet? And is it going to be, and the time difference? And so you let all of that get in the way. So I'm with you, right? It's just a first date. It's not a marriage proposal. So have a nice chat, see if things work. Take it from there.
And if you've identified someone in your team, for example, if they're in your team, it's a no-brainer that you're going to most likely learn from them. So if I've identified someone that really can teach me something and really can enable me to learn maybe something different, what would you think would be 1 or 2 questions that you would ask them to position yourself so that you can learn and not possibly be intimidating or maybe too blunt with them?
I'm going to think about that. I want to share something on the sort of mentor-mentee relationship, and then hopefully I'll have an answer. I think what I always underestimated was the value that was given. So I always felt like I was just taking like a little sponge, and I always felt like this was unfair. And I didn't like that idea. Like, why I'm getting everything, what am I giving back here? But I didn't realize, and I still probably don't realize it enough, that your perspective, whatever it might be, and however obvious it might seem to you as the mentee, if we're giving these some official titles, that other person doesn't have that perspective. And presumably they are somebody who you're aspiring to maybe be like. So they are probably interacting with a lot of people like you. If I just think about people in our organization. So to have the perspective of somebody else, even as the mentor, is incredibly valuable. So maybe to those of you, if you're a bit like me, who feel like I don't want to just sort of take, you can rest assured in the knowledge that you are giving back, even if you don't think you are, just in sharing your sort of perspective. Questions? Grant, it's a tough question. I didn't think this would be the toughest one of today.
That's why everyone knows that this is completely unscripted. It's completely unscripted and live.
I think that there has to be a genuine interest. If you are asking the question and you don't actually care about the answer, but you think it's the right question to ask, it's probably the wrong question. So, today, even if you just said, hey, Candice, really like that green shirt. Where did you buy it? We might have a conversation that sparks on from that. Or, hey, Candice, why don't you turn the aircon on? Because it looks like you're getting a little red. Yes, the room is heating up. But I think there's really no wrong or right question. I think it's about, if you are interested in the answer, and I can see that, then I'm going to be excited to give my time to talk to you about that question. If it feels like you're doing this so that you can have a mentor or that you can ask a question, and I'm probably going to lose interest, and vice versa, you won't really be interested in the answer, so we'd just be wasting our time. So I think that's the old adage, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I tell my guys there is, it's the question you don't ask. That's the only stupid question. But if you care about the answer, then there's really no wrong question to start with.
I'm not even going to comment on that. So Candice, our time's up. So it really goes fast. I really appreciate you joining as well and really providing your perspective so that others in a position where either they would like to join a team and lead a team or are currently leading a team can test a few different ideas of what you've shared today that are actually practical instead of just theoretical.
Grant, you shared with me that potentially a fair amount of this audience are people aspiring to be leaders or maybe trying to carve out some leadership in wherever they are in their team. And I can't stress enough how you have to, I'm not going to use the word passion because I think it's overused. It's a beautiful word, but you really have to care about the thing that you want to lead. It's not, you can balance a cash book without caring about balancing a cash book. I wouldn't like you to have to do that, but you could, right? And you could probably build a house without caring about building a house. But I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned as I've moved through various leadership roles is that if that isn't there, you're going to have an uphill battle. And no matter how smart or how many textbooks you've read or how many podcasts you've listened to with respect to our conversation, it's really got to come from that sort of genuine interest and care in the thing that I'm doing. And then it comes back to being a little bit easier and not the script that you're following.
Well, on that note, Candice, thank you so much for joining us. And I genuinely appreciate your time as well as your perspective. And I'm pretty certain that everyone else listening does too. And most likely will be contacting you in the near future on LinkedIn, DMing you and asking you a specific question.
I take a little time, but I do respond on LinkedIn, I promise. So just be patient with me. Grant, thank you for the invite. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. I really have. Thank you.
My pleasure. And to everyone listening, thank you again for tuning in to Lessons in Leadership. Thanks again and see you soon. Cheers.